Ron. Welcome back to another edition of the Bebo Knows podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock. And with me today, I have Mr. Johnny Nissan. You can catch him on Twitter at John_Nissan, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, I think
should
that's
know that.
right.
Yeah. Well, there's one and only, so you're the one and only. I don't really care if there is one or not, but another one, but you're the one and only to
There might
me.
be.
Um,
Yeah.
so welcome to the pod, John.
Thank you.
Sorry, we had your buddy Jimmy on yesterday, but due to some technical difficulties and him being sick today, it's just going to be one-on-one here. So Jimmy will be here in spirit.
Yeah,
He wishes he could be here, but thank you for joining, John.
no problem.
As a first-time guest, I like to usually have people give a little betting introduction of themselves. Discuss how you got into betting, what things you bet on, memorable betting moments, things you might consider yourself good at or maybe not as bad at as other things. So feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so been in Las Vegas my entire life. So kind of just grown up in the city and I mean, probably until like my early 20s that I realized like the difference that Las Vegas is to other cities. I wasn't completely oblivious thinking, like gambling and because those were everywhere else, but people were always like, what's it like growing up in Vegas? And I'm like, I went to school. My dad owned car dealerships and my mom worked at a bank. So from that aspect, I never thought of it any different until we started talking about, betting stories and just other random Vegas things. And I was like, oh, maybe it is more different than I give it credit for. But firstly, I mean, I don't know in many other schools, but maybe this, but I remember my first bet ever was in sixth grade of all places. And it wasn't like something like my dad like gave me like a parlay sheet to hang out or to or like a scratcher or something like that.
Yeah.
But there was actually like a seventh or eighth grader going around during recess and he had like a little 3-ring binder and he was taking bets with lines and like everything, like a little bookie. And I don't remember, I don't remember the full details on it, but I do remember I picked Dolphins -3 for $5. And I believe they're at home. And this is like during the Dan Marino era. And I think the only reason I picked it was I just recently watched like Ace Ventura where he saves Dan Marino and the Dolphin. So that was the extent of my betting knowledge at the time. And not a whole lot's changed since, but I don't remember who they played. I do remember them being at home. I do remember them losing. So you would think the first bet out of the gate being a loser and a lunch money when you're in sixth grade would not send you down this path, but it almost certainly did.
and I can't imagine too many people had that system that you did of Ace Ventura being the influence on it.
I'm more impressed by the seventh grader bookie that was, taking pretty like live action, during recess. I don't know if kids were moving lines back in the day, but I was like, oh, this is something that sounds interesting, and just ended up staying. And I was like, well, I should have saw the writing on the wall at that point, but I continued down this path. But I never told my dad about it, but my dad used to go to the casino and he would get 2 of the like NFL pick'em cards, just pick winners. Most amount of right and most losses won, and then they had something I remember called like fiddle in the middle. So if you went exactly 50-50, you got a prize. So I do remember that, and that probably lasted from when I was a kid all the way up until probably I was like 16, 17 or so. It was just something that me and my dad did every week.
Okay.
From there. It kind of faded off from there, but things really changed when I started working on the strip at a restaurant that was a kind of a sports bar during the day. nightclub at night, but it was more of like a spring break type of feel. It had TVs all over the restaurant. There's probably, I don't know, 20-something TVs. We would show the UFC fights, the Conor fights, Floyd Mayweather fights, Pacquiao fights, and we would sell out for those. So I got to watch a lot of sports, and when we started kind of picking up our bettings, our restaurant was inside the Monte Carlo, which is now Park MGM, it was attached to a sports book. So before mobile betting was a thing, we would, on our breaks, we'd have runners, just sending runners like at half times of NBA games to the sports book and like placing bets for us. And we eventually ended up getting the code for all the TVs. So all of the day, it'd be a WNBA game would be on a TV, a CFL game would be on a TV, and then you'd have like, Lakers like on the big screen, just, but people were like, why does anyone care about this Brewers game versus the Reds? I mean, it's because we all had like the over on it or something like that.
Yeah, if there's one thing I learned about my times going to Vegas is that there's like at least one person that cares about a game that's on the television.
Yeah, and I see threads on Twitter about people going about like not even like sports on it. It's got the news or some other just like a game show going on, and it's not like it's a slight mistake. Like it's like a hour-long ordeal for them to get to change station. Like we would have guests all the time come in and be like, "Hey, I'm a Jets fan," or I'm a Dolphins fan or whatever. Can you put those games on? It's just something, being in this industry, you have to be like fully aware of.
Sure. Yeah. Even if you're like Jimmy and you're not a sports fan, you still in the industry, you still need to know the games that are going on and what channels they're on, and have some kind of working, just so you can have some kind of working knowledge and be able to talk to these people about it.
Especially if we get like a big table of guys that come in, for whatever game, and then the cocktail waitress is telling them about like some team's ATS streak or just something against, on the road. It helps in the tips, and it just gives them something more to talk about. And it's definitely something that's across all the city in different types of work, from being from a bartender to a cocktail server to even in my job now, which is more office-like. They talk like, "Oh, did you hit anything over the weekend?" It's still in that space that everybody has action going on, whatsoever. Even my mom talks about, oh, the Knights lost last night. I'm like, oh, they really weren't favored to win, and she like understands that meaning, but probably never bet $1 in her life in any casino in this town.
Sure, but she'll know more about it than my mom would.
Yeah,
you don't know my mom, but yeah, she doesn't know shit about gambling. So.
But my mom, like, my parents are never big fans of me, like, gambling or just, like, betting sports. But now my mom will ask me, she's like, "Oh, did you have anything on the game last night?" Or, like, she asked me about future tickets, or she's like, "Hey, should I put some money on the Knights to win it all this series?" She asked me those things, but I don't know if she's secretly going to the casino saying she's going to play bingo and she's hanging out at the sports book at South Point. But I wouldn't put it past her at this point.
Talking like horse racing terms and
yeah, I mean, she could be doing that. But even early on, like, all of us would work. We'd actually get to the Monte Carlo like at 3:30, and our shift started at 5, because most of the baseball games and most of the hockey stuff started at 4. And we would sit in the book. There'd be like 10 or 12 of us, trying to put together like our parlays for the day, because we didn't know much better. It was still kind of understanding, at least in my understanding of how a pro bettor actually works, because I just started getting into Twitter and realizing that there are ways to do this to make money, and then there's things to listen to and things to absolutely never do. And pretty much, putting together 8-team, 10-team football teasers for, my early 20s is just not the way to go. But I think delving into Twitter and meeting people on there virtually and in person changed the way I kind of looked at it. Like, I don't think I was ever like a professional bettor, but I wanted to have the mindset of a professional bettor, like not betting into bad numbers or giant, massive favorite parlays or learning how to hedge, like people say, we never hedge or whatever. Like it's just something I don't believe in anymore. And still, some other, people don't care to listen to help when it's out there right in their face.
Sure. Okay, so let's go into the life in Vegas. So the first part of life in Vegas that we wanted to talk about was the sports teams, in particular the Golden Knights, which when did they start? 2017 or 18?
17, I think.
17.
I want to say 17 is kind of when, I think that's when, like 17 to, I think it started like October 17 and they went into 18.
Okay.
But they even announced the team, it was, people were just like, oh, well, I hope this means we're going to get basketball soon. Like people weren't really that excited to have a hockey team. There's 2 ice rinks out here. Some people use them, but there definitely there wasn't the buzz like you would think there would have been, or for futures. People were just kind of ho-hum about it. They did ended up selling out their season tickets, but even up to their first game, people were just not really all that into it unless you were like a really like hardcore sports fan. And they did their thing, like want to name the team and ask the public, and the owner of the team basically said, I don't care what you guys say, I'm going to name it whatever I want. So they ended up having like a big name unveil at the stadium, and I went with a friend of mine, and actually went with a Slam deal. We went to the naming thing, and names were getting leaked, and they were like, okay, it's definitely going to be the Knights, but is it going to be the Silver Knights, the Desert Knights? We heard Night Hawks was one of them, and everyone's like, well, what about Golden Knights? And they're just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like Nevada is a silver state. Just gold didn't make a whole lot of sense. And then they go to the big name reveal, and they have the curtain drops, and it says Golden Knights, and you can just hear like all the excitement get sucked out of the crowd. There's video of it somewhere, like nobody cheers. You just hear like the 2 like confetti cannons go off, and it's just like, what? Like that's what we're going with? And like I walked away from that probably more furious than I should have been. And there are other people online that were upset that they didn't call it Las Vegas Golden Knights. They just went with Vegas. I'm like, well, that's what the locals call it, which is completely untrue. Nobody says that, but because of the Knights now, people say Vegas or BGK, and it's kind of gone away. But I do remember there was a newspaper guy out here, like a sports reporter, was like, I am giving away my season tickets that I purchased because they're not calling it Las Vegas. There is a definite upset to it. I got over it pretty quickly, even before they started. I was like, the guy helped pay for the stadium. MGM paid for the stadium. He paid to get his $500 million to get the team here. He can pretty much call it whatever he wants. And I got over it pretty quickly. I'm still not even rid of the primary logo. I have the secondary logo on, which I actually like, which is our state's like atomic star, which has a lot of history with the state.
Yeah, looks sharp.
Yeah, but it was kind of fun. I went to a couple of the preseason games, and it was a lot of people are saying, I'm going to go, but I'm a Blackhawks fan, I'm going to wear my Blackhawks jersey. I'm a Kings fan, I'm going to wear my Kings jersey. Like, and those are from people that lived here. Not even like everyone assumed the arena was going to be 80% of whatever the other opposing team was, and it kind of started out that way, and then the winning changed that, and you wouldn't be caught dead wearing like a Kings jersey or, God forbid, a Sharks jersey in this town right now.
So not having had that experience as a fan of a team that just came into town, because Chicago has always had teams in every sport.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how quickly did people go from their original team to the Knights? Because I know, if I remember right, Slam, for example, is or was a Rangers fan, I think.
I think, yeah, he still is.
Okay.
But yeah.
So you felt that changed pretty quickly, though? Like, you felt like people were embracing them pretty fast?
I would say it probably happened halfway through the first season.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it had to do with the October 1 shooting that was here, which happened right before game one of their inaugural season. And Derek England gave this great speech. They brought out all the first responders. It was a really heartfelt moment. And it was finally something for people to get their minds off of what had happened. And it gave everybody in the city kind of something to cling to, unlike UNLV, where even people that have lived here for 20 years, like Jimmy's lived here for 20 years, or even, my dad or whatever, like they liked UNLV, but they were never like fans of UNLV. Like if they lost, or had a bad season, it's just like, all right, whatever, I guess we're just, it didn't have that take to it. Like when the Knights lose now, like it's like sorrow. Like it's a different type of feeling, and that's felt from if you're a diehard Red Wings fan, like it's changed. And I think a lot of it had to do with October 1, and I think a lot of it had to do with them winning the way they did and their effect in the community right now.
Okay. So going into more sports, we got the Raiders coming into town, and I mean the odds of an NFL season based on what you read are, at least I think, pretty small of happening. But let's just say that they do play this year. Like, how much are you looking forward to it? And how much is the town looking forward to it? Do you think it's comparable to the Knights, or maybe a little bit more because it's football?
I think it's more because it's football. But, like, the one thing that's disappointing to me about the new stadium is, and in most football games that I heard, the best thing about going to a football game or even a college game is the tailgate. There is no parking at the new Raiders Stadium.
Oh.
There's about 2,400 spots. 1,200 of those are reserved for team and personnel, and I'm sure those other 1,000 spots are going to be to the highest. So all the parking is remote around town within like a few mile radius, and I just don't think that's going to provide the same experience, because most people tell you now watching football is best to do at home, but going to the game is like the experience of it. And I just don't think walking from the Mandalay Bay across the freeway with like a tall can is going to be the same experience that they're expecting. But who am I to say? They sold out their season tickets with PSLs faster than expected by almost I think it was like 9 months. And so I don't know if their people are buying it because they don't want to, they have fear of missing out, or they're buying it for investment purposes. But I mean, the PSL prices were cheap. I know 3 people who got them. One person's on the third level with 2 tickets. That was $9,600. Third level middle for 2 tickets was $13,000. And then I have a friend who has 4 tickets, second level. His were $100,000 for the PSL.
Good Lord.
And I mean, we have people hitting us up like, oh, when the Chiefs are in town, we're going to come to town and, buy your tickets or whatever. I want, this thing to fall apart. I mean, we're paying for half of it. So, yeah. I'll probably buy a Raiders hat myself because I don't have an NFL team. But Jimmy yesterday said he's like, I'm a Saints fan, and that's never going to change. One of my friends is a Steelers fan. She bought tickets. And she's like, well, I'm still a Steelers fan. And she's like, I'll probably not even go to the games, but I just bought the tickets because she was afraid something like Green Bay is going to happen where you're not going to be able to get tickets, for hundreds of years or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think it could get any worse than, say, like LA is, where nobody really gives a shit about LA. I think you'll still get people to come to your games more than they do in LA. But I would be interested to see how, the home field advantages for the bettors. Is it going to be a significant edge, or is it just because you're so transient that it's going to be very hard to establish a true home field advantage?
Yeah. I probably picture it something closer to what the Chargers have dealt with, but maybe more of a 50-50 split, just because the Raider fans are so frantic, and I just don't think the Charger fans are as fanatic in a good way. But if it was ever over 50-50, yeah, I would be completely shocked. But it's the same thing they said about the Golden Knights, and look where they are.
Yeah.
But I mean, NFL is a different beast.
Yeah, I feel like allegiances are stronger with teams in NFL than they probably are with NHL. I mean, you probably had more of and you had more of a base that didn't have like a particular rooting interest probably than you do now, where NFL's got so many different teams that people are fans of. Like I'm a fan of the 49ers because they were good when I was younger. Like so, there's going to be things like that. But okay, so going into some more Vegas stuff, I had some like best and worst things
Yeah.
here that I wanted to touch base on. So one of the first things was about just living there in general, the best and worst things about living in Las Vegas.
Jimmy said it yesterday. It's pretty accurate. I think the best thing about this city is it's 24 hours, and the worst thing about this city is it's 24 hours. That being, like, I love the fact that I can just go down the street. I can ride my bike from the house to the Strip, and there's great concerts there. There's great food there. Now we have great sports tournaments right down the street. I don't have to plan a huge weekend if I didn't live in like a bigger area where I'd have to travel, from like Grand Forks to Minneapolis to see a game. Like I don't have to put that much effort into having a good time, or I can go for weeks at a time without even touching the Strip and just do stuff more locally or more towards like the west side of town, which is just really developed and has good restaurants. It's nice that it's there, but you don't have to live there all the time. But the fact that it is 24 hours, we were called like a 3-shift city. You have a day shift, a night shift, and a graveyard. So when football does come around and it's like 5 o'clock on a Thursday, or want to watch Monday Night Football, most of your friends are working, or most of your friends are sleeping, getting ready to work. So that community sense isn't there as much. Like your friends become basically like your high school friends. If they're not on the same work schedule as you, they're basically gone at this point.
Yeah.
Because we just don't share the same time frame.
No,
people are getting off work at 2 a.m. to start their day. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, and I was.
But having the best chefs in the world and the best concerts in the world is, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, and I'd imagine too, especially based on some of the stories that you're going to share, the one thing that it does seem to lend itself to very well is kind of spontaneity in terms of entertainment. Because, like you said, there's so much to do, and you've obviously found yourself in some interesting predicaments on board nights that the average person could not find themselves in. Like if when I'm bored on an average night here, before COVID, I'm not going to be able to have those same stories and experiences that you do when you're bored. And you'll be like, oh, let me go to the Strip and see what's going on. Like a little different.
But you can go to can't you go to downtown Chicago and I
could.
Isn't that kind of, I feel that's kind of similar, like Chicago, LA, Las Vegas, Miami, New York. But I mean, if you're, I don't know, in the Bible Belt area, maybe not so much, but I mean, or like Nashville's coming up, so I just don't. I think some of the things that Vegas does can happen in other places. We still have that, that Vegas draw. I think that's good. I think we're still the best at doing it, even with a lot of imitators.
Sure.
I mean, there's a reason the NFL wanted to draft here, 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. So the next best worst that I have here is related to sports books. So there's obviously a shit ton of sports books, and there's probably some that have a good reputation for a good reason. Some maybe people consider certain ones overrated. Which ones do you like to go to, or do you like to point people to if they've never been here to go visit?
I think the best rounded sports book is the South Point, which you do hear a lot of now, especially now that VSiN casts from them. But they do take a lot of money. They do a lot of different things like CFL, WNBA. I know their app now is like expand if you're one of those lucky few that can get it. But from what I've heard, even on the live betting, I haven't heard any too many negative things like I've heard from like William Hill or even like I heard BetMGM. I haven't downloaded that or attempted it because I've seen $6 live wager bets get canceled and it's or their payback policy is if you put in a bunch of money on Thursday and you're leaving town Sunday, there's some kind of holdup that I saw someone post about. So I just never ventured that way. But I think South Point is probably the most well-rounded, easy to get in, easy to get out. And if you're up for it, they have dollar bowling after midnight,
Nice.
Thursday through Sunday. So I like that aspect of it. I know you hear a lot about the Westgate Sportsbook, which in itself is like a large, great sportsbook to check out. The issue is where it's located is maybe one of the worst parts of town, in one of the worst hotels that we have. There's been the West, probably 20 years out of the sportsbook. They used to have a Star Trek experience, like theme park kind of thing in there that didn't last too long. But even if you go there now, if you go into the sports book through like the east side, kind of like the back entrance, you're walking full of the Star Trek Enterprise to go place your bets. Like they haven't changed it. It's still there. It's just kind of like a shell of itself. And it's just not a great place to be, I would say, just hanging out. Go to the sports book and get out of there as quick as possible and maybe venture off to something a little safer. But I think once the Circa book goes up downtown, I think that'll be the new go-to as far as information and hopefully what they've done so far in creating first lines available for college football and first season totals. They're kind of leading the way for, I know Vegas has that quote like Vegas sets the lines, but we all know that never really was the case up until probably Circus started doing it like last season.
Yeah, and one thing that we should mention when you're betting, like I don't know, I have a handful of bettors that listen to this that might not bet as much. So like for people who aren't really familiar, there's a lot of books that you have very small limits, and also you get banned if you're any good. And I think Circa, from what I hear, is good about that in general, but I don't know if that's entirely true, if I'm misremembering that.
I haven't heard much negative. I think their sportsbook director, he's on VSiN quite a bit. He'll talk pretty openly about handle or his plays, and I think that's a good way instead of just like other books just releasing like we just took a 6-figure bet on this or limiting players or banning players or stuff like that. So I mean, I would give them benefit of the doubt. I went down there actually to open up an account like a couple weeks ago, but downtown Fremont Street during the day where the two Circa books are currently is not exactly the greatest place to hang out. It's sights and smells is the best way I would describe it. I mean, a lot of people love the chaos that's Fremont Street where the lights are and the tall drinks and, taking photos with cartoon characters. That area is not for me, but I think once the new Circa Hotel and Downtown Grand has a new expansion going on, I think that'll kind of change the landscape of downtown. I'm pretty excited for that.
Okay. All right. So as far as the best and worst times to go to Vegas, I know that one of the questions that Kevin Hogan, who was on the podcast a few podcasts ago, was asking if March Madness was overrated. Now, I always had that as a bucket list item, and then I kind of changed my mind thinking, I don't know if I'd want to deal with all the crowds, but you seem to have somewhat of a different opinion on that.
I actually think March Madness, at least in my opinion, this is like my favorite time of the year and I think it'd be there because it starts Thursday and it's all day Thursday, all day Friday, pretty much all day Saturday and all day Sunday. So you get a lot of value for just enjoying sports or a multitude to bet on Unlike, I think, the Super Bowl where it's only Sunday, and once your bets are in, they're kind of locked, and there's not a whole lot we can do. But like you said, the prices are a little bit higher for March Madness. But if you plan ahead, there's a lot of places that do viewing, and and I've met up with a lot of the guys from Seaville, and they usually get tables or reservations at places around town that do like, it's $100 a head, but it's unlimited drinks, unlimited food. And I think that's the way to go. We spent an entire afternoon at this place in the Venetian with like unlimited drinks to the point where they ran out of Bud Light. Like it was pretty good value for the money. And there's a bunch of places around town that offer that. And I think the Super Bowl is actually probably the worst time to come down here, at least as far as sports. If you're not a big fan of the crowds, like you're saying, you don't want to pay that, I would do like the Pac-12 tournament, because during the Pac-12 tournament is usually the West Coast Conference is here, the WAC is here, and the Mountain West is going on. So this year was a little bit different. They moved up 2 of the tournaments, but the years prior, they had all 4 tournaments going on at 4 different locations at the same time. So you can catch a Pac-12 championship game, the Mountain West game, and like a Gonzaga BYU or St. Mary's championship game all within like a 48-hour period. And I think that's a great thing about being here during that time.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And I think I might like conference season a little better. Like, I don't know if the crowds would be any better, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever end up going, but I'm sure as a service industry guy goes, that's probably another reason why you like it too, because of the business that it drums up for you guys.
I like it. I like it during the Final Four because I can actually catch it. But maybe that's why I have a disdain for the Super Bowl, because for the last 12 years or so, every mega fight, every Super Bowl, we had to like work it. Yeah. So previous to having professional sports, I considered Vegas. Imagine like your house was the house everybody went to for every Super Bowl, every event, but you had to do the planning. You had to do the cooking. You had to buy the drinks. Everybody had a fun time around you, and you had to stay there sober and babysit and then clean up after them. So being in the service industry, you're basically the host and never got to really enjoy a lot of the fun. You just had to babysit. Sure. And then hopefully they tipped you properly, or there was, some financial benefit to it. But I think this New Year's, or was like the first New Year's in 12 years that I actually did not have to work. And I was working on the strip, just within a glass cage, just watching people have fun while I had to work. And it's not exactly the best experience going with that.
Sure. Okay. The last Vegas question that I had here was related to tips to navigate Vegas for somebody who's visiting for the first time. So, like, for example, if you're going during March Madness, that's not something you want to wing. I know that much. You don't want to just go there and expect that you're going to get a seat and get drinks. You got to have a fucking plan for that. Now,
definitely for March Madness. Yeah.
Now, besides something like that might be obvious to me. Mm-hmm. Well, like for somebody who's going there for the first time, what would you recommend?
I would, if you're coming here and you're staying on the Strip, I would recommend not spending your entire time on the Strip. There's definitely some places to hit, but if you spend your entire time, I mean, I assume like a standard vacation to Vegas is like a Thursday through Sunday sort of thing. If you're a lucky person that can spend like a couple of weeks here, I mean, it's kind of different, but I assume most people are doing like a 4-day trip. Yeah. So I would do a night on the Strip. I would do a night downtown and maybe try to talk to some bar Uber driver and find like a local favorite, maybe something off the Strip like a hidden gem. And I think that's the best way to spend your time here.
Okay, so I mean, I would imagine that most of the drivers can give you that kind of tip. Like you probably have to have that knowledge to be any kind of decent.
Yeah. And then there's a few local staples that anyone off the top of your head, like we were talking about the bracket, the eating out bracket you showed me earlier.
Yeah.
There's a few staples on there that anyone in the city will be like, oh yeah, you got to eat there. You got to try to eat there.
Yeah, and I was always a sucker for the Bellagio buffet, but I think it's gone up way in price since I first went there like 10 years ago. Um,
Yeah, I mean, Bellagio I heard was a good buffet. Planet Hollywood I heard had a good buffet, and I heard Caesars is now the place to go if they ever come back, which is another thing the city has talked about that may not come back.
like casinos that might not actually survive this.
No, buffets. They're saying buffets
Oh,
might not. Yeah,
oh,
they're saying
gotcha.
of the things that we may kind of lose are buffets is something they talked about, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, that makes sense with how disgusting people are. I could see that. Um,
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of talk of like what the city's going to be like in a few months, but I mean, we'll see how it goes.
yeah, it's so many unknowns for everybody here. Um,
Yeah, but it's like as far as like restaurants go, Herbs and Rye is one of the number one rated restaurants and bars in the entire United States. They're like a craft cocktail, speakeasy, steak, and seafood type of place. Half price steaks during happy hour. They have a midnight to 2 a.m. happy hour so they've got a pretty good reputation out here. Um, there's a place inside the Cosmopolitan called Milk, which is like a dessert place.
okay.
And Cosmopolitan is just a fun place to hang out. They have good bars, good restaurants there. And one of the things they have there is like an ice cream that they put an entire like pecan pie into like the ice cream mixer, and it's pretty phenomenal.
That sounds delicious.
I like it. You wouldn't think of Vegas as a dessert place or like a milkshake place, but it's pretty great.
Uh, well, I haven't had anything like that in Vegas myself. I think I usually try to spend most of my money on the sports books, and like I'll nickel and dime. A lot of times on trips I'll nickel and dime my way through food and drink or as much as I can. But maybe next time I go, I'll try to see a different side of it. Um,
Yeah, and then a lot of the big restaurant chefs out here have or a third restaurant off the strip that caters to locals, but it's pretty much the same menu. Um, one of the Greek restaurants at the Cosmo, he has a secondary restaurant right around the corner from my house. You can just go pick up like curbside food. It's the same chef, same preparation. Um, Carrie Simon has a place at the Palms, and then he had a place downtown Fremont, which is still there. And it's impeccable food. And I actually ran into him one time and he yelled at me, but yeah, we've eaten at the place. It's called Carson's Kitchen downtown, and it's based off his technique and his style. It's the same food, quarter of the price.
okay. Now, speaking of the restaurants and all that, right now
Mhm.
during this virus breakout and everyone kind of having to adjust their businesses, how do you think the Vegas businesses have adjusted? Do you see a lot of places that are delivering now that didn't before? People kind of like being creative with how they do things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of places have started delivering food now. They had just legalized over the weekend booze delivery from our liquor stores here.
Nice.
And then I just saw something before we came on that they've already put a stop to it because the demand was too high and they didn't have the infrastructure to handle it. Um, Fortunately, out here in Las Vegas, I don't know if it's the same in other places, but you don't need like a designated liquor store to get your liquor. You can just go to your Rayleigh's, your Food for Less type of place. They have a liquor section. You may not be getting your high-end whiskeys there, but you can get your Jamesons, your Tito's and sodas. You can get that fixed. And there's a
Sure.
gas station around the corner from my house that has a craft beer freezer that somehow has not been rated. And uh, we just hit, if I need gas, so at least I'm kind of doing a couple things at the same time. I'm just not being some guy just out there just going to grab it and leave, during this whole social distancing thing. And it's worked out, but everyone's trying to implement a delivery service, but the strip itself completely down. And I think 80% of the people that work in the hotels are unemployed right now. So that's changed. I know some of the hotels last week were going through their back stock and meats, and they were just selling whole like steaks and stuff like that. I sent it over to Slam actually because he deals with that. And he came across some like Kobe beef like a while ago that a restaurant was selling for like pennies on the dollar. So we come across those random deals like that.
Yeah, people are just they need to make a living somehow, and even if it's just selling something temporarily, just to get some coins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a ghost town out there. It's eerie to see.
Yeah, the pictures you showed, I think you even sent some videos to me. It was just very spooky. Like even in Vegas's deadest times, it was, from the times that I went there, it was always like, still way busier than an average town. And,
Yeah.
It's kind of sad to see. It's just the reality of the situation. So.
Yeah, were you saying something about flight prices or something?
Oh
being
yeah.
extremely cheap?
So I was looking at flights. And I mean, obviously, it's not something that I'll ever be able to take advantage of because it's just there's really no point going right now. But a round trip flight, $85, and that's after taxes and all that. And it's like, it's like, well, fuck, I can't. I mean, obviously, it's $85 for a reason, supply and demand. It's the same reason gas over here is like $1.79 or whatever it is now. I'm sure it's cheaper other places. I mean, it's probably cheaper other places because Cook County taxes the shit out of everything, but that's besides the point.
You got that's cheaper than us.
So yeah, it's it's something I obviously can't really take advantage of, but it's just like, damn, I wish I could pull the trigger on that, but
there's nothing to do right now. I mean, the only things that are open are gas stations, grocery stores, and automotive repair. There's not a whole lot to do right now.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go into some of your stories here. So I think you were going to narrow it down to a handful. I know you had probably like 6 or 7 on the original list, so I think you were going to narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4. So, I think the first one you wanted to bring up was the Mike Tyson one because that's obviously the biggest name out of this list that you have, I would say, and obviously, one of the most fascinating characters of our lifetime. In fact, when I was pulling up Netflix this afternoon to turn something on, like it was showing the clip from Hangover when Rob Riggle is in there with the guys. And I was like, oh, this is kind of like tying like everything together about the podcast today. But as far as the Tyson story goes, feel free.
It's like a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of thing going on.
Exactly. So share your Mike Tyson story because I find this fascinating.
Yeah. So I'm going to say 12 years ago. It was 4th of July weekend. We were just at a friend's house, hanging out in the backyard, area town called Green Valley. It's the east side, Las Vegas. And it's standard barbecue, beer pong, sort of thing. And then someone comes in, they're like, hey, we just heard of this party going on a street down the road, a street called the Tamiyasu. And the street's known for because Wayne Newton's house is on that road, and there's a lot of just massive houses on this one stretch of road. It's not that big. Like, it's big houses, but from one street to the next, it's about 4 houses on each side. Because these things are pretty palatial estates.
Okay.
So when someone said that there's a party going on at Tamiyasu, it could have been anybody, but I just know those houses are massive. We're going to check this out. So about 3 or 4 cars jump in. We go. We turn the corner onto the street, and it's just rows of cars. Like, there's definitely something happening here, something definitely worth checking out. We start walking up the road, and we come to a house. It's a big gated house. You really can't see behind it, but there's security guards out front, black suits, black tie, clipboard, names like it's a Vegas nightclub to get into this house at 5 p.m. on a Saturday or whatever it was. And it wasn't Wayne Newton's house, but it was definitely a larger house. So a couple people were like, left. They just went back to the other house. Like, there's no way we're getting in. Like, this is dumb. They're checking names. Like, this not. So they left. 6 of us stayed. So we walk up to the front and try to survey like what's going on. And one of our friends, Matt, was like, I'm just gonna like run into the middle of this group and just go in with someone who gets checked in. I'm like, there's no way that's gonna work. They're gonna be like, who is this guy? So he walks up to the front of the gate. And on the first attempt, first try, about 10 people walk in. He just walks in right behind him, just like waves at the security guard, like, yeah, I'm with these guys. And he's in, instantly in. And there's 5 of us just standing outside like, I cannot believe that worked. But on the plus side, I was like, okay, now we have a man inside who can kind of give us some like optics of what's going on. So I call Matt, and all I can hear is just like loud music in the back of the bar. And he just hangs up on us. Call back again, and he hangs up on us again. So now our one possible lead to the inside is just gone AWOL into this party. So as we try to figure out, like, we have to get in because it sounded like it was a good time and he wasn't coming back, so we had to go find him to see for ourselves. And the house next to it was just being built. So it was like a wood house, but it was like still underdeveloped. Like, there's no landscaping. We're still like the desert for what Vegas desert's known for. So we go down a couple houses, and the wall is about 8 feet tall, where you can host like pick up your friends, like throw them over the wall. And we decided this was the way to go. I assumed personally that I was going to throw a big house party. You probably want people to go around the house for either catering or even you're getting your pool clean. Like, that's the way the pool guy would come. There's got to be a pool gate or something that's not 20 feet tall at the front of the house with surrounding it. There's got to be like an area to get in. Yeah. So we throw ourselves over the wall, and now it's starting to get dark out. And I don't know if the security guards heard us, but it turned into a movie where they have their flashlights out in the desert and like kind of scoping for where we are. And we're just hitting the grounds, like hiding behind trees or hiding behind a cactus, like a giant like Joshua tree, just like with your arms, like however it goes, just like some silly cartoon. And we were just making our way through, it's probably an acre lot of undeveloped land, just like stickers and just getting like shredded. I remember bleeding all down my arms, like trying to army crawl across it, like that was going to help. But we immediately make a beeline towards the corner of this house. And not only is there a pool gate there, the pool gate's wide open, like not even locked, not even shut. It was like come on in. And inside there's all this pool equipment, but there was another gate, probably about 6 feet tall, and you push the gate open, and it was like the scene in Willy Wonka. Like, it just opens up to this magical land of like people dancing, music going. There's girls up on top of on the roof area dancing, and there's a bar immediately to the right as we walk in, and there's our friend Matt with a drink in one hand trying to get another. We're like, dude, what happened? He's like, this place is awesome. I'm like, why didn't you pick up the phone? And we were already in, and it was as good as you can imagine. There's peacocks walking by, the water slides going. There's about 3 different pools, kind of all interconnected, and we're just kind of meandering our way. I was like, I wonder if the house is open. Let's go see like if there's something going on inside. So we make our way after getting some free drinks to the front, and the doors are locked. But what was interesting about the doors is the handles to get in the door were a pair of like boxing gloves, like this, like the door handles. So we're like looking inside, and over like the living room, over the fireplace was probably like a 12-foot tall painting of Mike Tyson holding the championship belt. Oh, and it was like, then we realized this is Tyson's house. This is Tyson's 4th of July barbecue, and we're at it. And then panic almost sets in at that point, because we're like, what if they catch us and realize they're not supposed to be here? Like, every possible scenario is going through our head as peacocks are just walking by and people in their bathing suits. But I was like, you know what? Let's just pretend we're supposed to be here. Let's just make our way to the bar, and we did again. And it was all free drinks. I mean, we didn't see Tyson there, but it was definitely his house. And from my recollection, I think it's quite possibly the same house that's in The Hangover with like the white walls. It looked very much like that possible house, but I didn't see any tigers there whatsoever.
So when you go there and you find that out, how the hell do you try to act natural, and how does your pulse not like come out of your arm?
I mean, I think a panic set in for like a little bit, like walking through that gate and kind of. But as soon as you were like deep enough in, there was quite a bit of people. Social distancing wasn't a thing happening at that
Yeah.
point. There was quite a number of people. I mean, it was the summer, so people were in their bathing suits, so it wasn't like we were not dressed for the occasion and stood out. So we kind of blended in.
Okay.
Um, if anything we took from that, we ended up taking like a rock about the size of a palm, and we wrote our names on it and said, "Thanks, Mike, for the party," and like left it on his door. And we left, and it was never an issue. It was just kind of, just like you said, we just stumbled into like a good time out of nothing.
Yep. Yep. Definitely a story that you'll be telling the rest of your life.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the second story here? Because I know that I don't know which ones you wanted to narrow it down to. What's the second one you wanted?
Well, we had talked about the Rob Riggle one since you mentioned it a
Yeah.
second ago, which is interesting because I don't even remember him being in Hangover.
Yeah. Yeah. When we
So
talked about that yesterday, I didn't even bring it up
yeah,
because I just thought like, oh, it was just common knowledge. But yeah, his role was like, it wasn't like a big role, but he
mhm.
had some good moments in
It's
there.
kind of about the same. It's kind of about the same time that we met him, and even to this day, when I tell people like, "Hey, we met Rob Riggle," people are like, "Who?" And it's like, "Oh, it's that guy."
Yeah.
But how that started off is we had a friend of ours getting married at Planet Hollywood, and her husband is military. So like during the wedding, the husband, the best man, and a couple of like his other friends are head to toe in their military. I think they were I forget exactly which branch they were in, Marine Corps, I think so. And the wedding goes off, standard Vegas wedding, small little room. We go back to our room, have a bunch of drinks. The the groomsmen, the bridesmaid, well, the bride's getting ready to go kind of like an after party downtown at Planet Hollywood. They're like their Circle Bar area for those familiar with it. Kind of a dark little thing, but nothing spectacular, nothing bad. But we end up going down there with the party, and we're sitting in like a large group. And then the cocktail waitress comes over and says, "Hey, there's a gentleman at the bar. I'd like to thank you for your services." Obviously speaking to them, not me or Jimmy. And we're like, "Oh, yeah, sure. We'll take free drinks." And then drinks come, and then a guy walks over and starts talking. I'm like, "Oh, my God, it's Rob Riggle." And like most of the people there didn't even know who he was at the time who was buying their drinks. So I thought it was just some like random guy just buying drinks. And he ended up like sitting down and just like they start telling like war stories or like where he served, standard stuff that I remember my dad talking, his friends talking about back in the day. And where things turned is when the husband starts introducing everybody that's around. It's about 12 people. Like, "This is my best man. This is his wife. This is my wife's good friend John. This is his boyfriend Jimmy. This is Celine. This is Jake." And it, my head just kind of turns. I'm like, "Wait a minute, like what just happened?" And Jimmy's sitting to my left, and I'm like, why did he stay reading? He's like, "Well, she's been telling him while he was, serving that we're a gay couple because she didn't want him to like think of anything weird. And nothing's weird. We have like a big group of people that always hang out and watch Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football at the same place. But I mean, I can understand where it came from, saying like, And so Rob Riggle is shaking everybody's hand, and he's like, comes up to me, and I'm like, "Jimmy, like, do I ruin this marriage right now, or do I just go with it?" He's like, "Dude, just go with it. Just go with it." So in my most flamboyant voice ever, I was like, "Hello, Mr. Riggle, nice to meet you." Like arm out, the limpest handshake you ever saw. And he just shook my hand, and he shook Jimmy's hand, and it just went on. And I was like, "What's that about?" And it never dawned on me that everybody that was in that circle that was like drinking with us earlier, they were up in our room. Like Jimmy brought all his like cocktail kit, and he was making drinks like before, during, and like after the wedding. Like they all met me and him. And then all of a sudden I had this new accent going on, like the most typical thing ever, right? She must be ashamed of it at this point. But they didn't, no one said anything. Like no one, they were like, which is just also weird to me now, but if I just wanted the free drinks. So now every time, Sunday Night Football on Fox comes on or Sunday Football comes on and Robert Riggle doing the halftime show, I'm like, oh, that guy thinks me and Jimmy are, and it's just every Sunday, it's just like a little reminder of that day.
Yeah, and you see him plenty if you're watching football. Okay.
Yeah, he's all over the place now, but at the time, like, he sat there for an hour and no one really came up to him. So,
yeah.
But now it's a different story.
Yeah, he couldn't get away with that now, and he's what he seems like he's kind of tall, right? So he does stand out in that regard.
He is. No, he's a tall dude. He's a tall dude, and he's a Naval Reserve or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
I think he was a Marine. I think he was a former Marine as well.
Yeah, he's still active or was active, like even when he was doing like Step Brothers, like that. Okay. That was like his claim to fame sort of thing.
Okay. All right, and I think you mentioned 3 stories. So is there a third one, or you could go into another one too? But I think you had mentioned that you were going to do 3 stories.
I could. We'll see where we are on time,
yeah,
but
it's a lot less time now. Because we cut out the Jimmy bartender stuff and all that, so we're not even at an hour yet. Which okay. It's still kind of.
I'll tell these. Yeah,
that's fine. No, just take your time. With whatever you want to share.
Well. There was another story. So one day, Jimmy works at a really dangerous town. It's on this side of town. It is super popular. Everyone knows it. A lot of people go there. And we were there one day. I think it was on his day off. And some guy comes up to the bar talking to the other bartender that was working. And I was like, hey, what are you guys doing later? I know of a house party that's happening in Southern Highlands, which is kind of a south of this. It's right behind like the South Point, for those familiar with the area, and it's kind of a richer neighborhood. And they're like, there's a party going on if you guys want to go. And we're like, yeah, it's, I guess, better than sitting here. Do you have address, directions? We'll put it in the phone. He's like, well, that's kind of a catch. You have to go to this office complex on such and such road, and you just have to wait for a black van. And we're like, for what? They're like, well, he just doesn't want a lot of people parking in front of his house, so there's a black van that's going to come pick you up. And immediately I had reserves already. Like, I was like, this sounds like we're about to get sold into sex trafficking, or this is just something, I don't know, some like prank show or something. We're supposed to be standing on a parking lot for an hour waiting for people. But of course, we probably had one more drink, and then we went to this parking lot, and it's an office complex with 2 or 3 cars there, like nothing going on. And we get out, we're waiting, and there's 2 or 3 other people there. And after some awkward, like, head gestures, we walk up to one of the people. It's like, so are you guys here for the party? And they're like, yeah, we're here waiting for the black van. Like, they got the same information we did. So either we were all going down with the ship together, or this was like some legitimate thing. And within about 5-10 minutes, this black van pulls up, the door swings open, like kind of like a small party bus. And the guy who's driving it, without any details, just goes, get in. Like, not like, hey, are you here for the party, the barbecue that I'm taking you to? Just says get in. Just grumpy as possible be, or not leading on to our future deaths that are about to happen. So the 3 of us, so me, Jimmy, our friend Alex, and like these 3 other people get onto this thing. He just shuts the door and just starts taking us up into the hills. And I'm like, all right, this seems legit. Like, he's not taking us to a wrong direction. So we pass about 2 gates, like, to get to this, and it drops us off in front of this massive house, like cobblestone driveway, massive like turrets on the top of it. And as soon as you get off, there's cocktail waitresses handing you drinks, just like full like shot glasses and vodka. And they're like, oh, it's so and so's vodka. It's a brand launch. I'm like, okay, this seems familiar. This seems like something, but it's still kind of weird. I'm like, maybe they're going to ask for money to get in, or you need to be on the guest list. And they just open the door, and the whole house is just opened up Like it's kind of one of those houses where the walls like slide into themselves, and you're basically, as soon as you walk in, you're outside again. And there's another bar right there, so more drinks again. And there's a whole buffet line around the right. I was like, oh, you probably have to pay for it or whatever. And we're kind of just like making our way in gingerly because it's just another one of those situations you feel like you're not supposed to be there. Like, and then I started looking at the paint, like the photos on the wall, like your standard like family photos, and I started noticing the faces are like the Maloof brothers. It's like Gavin Maloof, George Maloof. They're pretty iconic faces. If you're familiar with town, because he opened up the Palms, and they're always around town. He's been to Jimmy a bunch of times, like pretty casual person. So I was like, I think we're at Maloof house. And as soon as we figure it out, Gavin Maloof comes walking by in his board shorts and his sandals. He's like, welcome to the barbecue. And just like goes off with a hot dog in his hand. And next thing, we're just there for the rest of the night hanging out. And then come to find out later, this house, if you want to see it, is the house that's in the Lil Wayne Lollipop video. The whole video is filmed in Vegas, but it's actually his house. So it's a little bit different in the video. But the fountains, and like you can kind of get a feel for like the size of this house. And it's just one of those things I just couldn't believe. Like so much I couldn't believe. I started calling my other friend, Big Mike, and I'm like, dude, just go to the corner of such and such an Anthem, wait for a black van. He's like, I'm not doing this. And I was like, you have to trust me. And then 30 minutes later, the same thing happens to him. Doors just open. He has this bewildered look on his face. It's like, how is this a thing? And how is this happening? And like, it was like an open free-for-all. You just had to be standing in the right spot for this magical school bus thing to pick you up and take you to a land of free booze and music and this giant, massive barbecue.
Now, do you remember how the free booze tastes? Like in terms of, did you have samples of the release that they were doing that night?
Man, I can remember the bottle was, I forget the name of it, but it was all vodka and flavored vodka. And they were tall glasses. They were probably 3-ounce shot glasses filled to the top.
So they were pretty generous then. Yeah,
it wasn't a sampling like a beer fest or like a wine crawl where they kind of give you just a taste. I forget the name of the vodka, but I just remember the bottles lit up. That was like their big thing. But
now, did you see unlike the Tyson story, we didn't see Tyson there. Did you actually see the Maloof sit there?
I saw I believe I saw Gavin. I don't remember if I saw George. I've seen George around town a couple of times. He actually came to my restaurant one time, and huge tipper, super chill guy. I don't remember if I saw him, but I definitely saw Gavin because I remember just seeing him in his board shorts. I was like, well, I guess it's his house. He can wear whatever he wants.
Yeah, when you're that rich, I think you could wear whatever the fuck you want. Especially like you said.
Yeah, I thought that was just kind of cool. And I remember finding the door to his garage, and it was like a glass door, and you could peek through it, and it was just like Porsches, a Range Rover. And I remember there being that new 4-door Jeep, which I was like, of all the things that he's gonna buy, it's probably his get around car, but that thing, there was a McLaren in there, and then a Jeep. Just an everyday Jeep, nothing done to it whatsoever. Just probably gets his groceries in it.
Fair enough. All right. Did you want to tell anything else before we go into your more personal story?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell the Birdman story if you like.
Sure.
I think I'll start off by saying I think one of the good things about Vegas when it comes to athletes living here or famous people living here is they're out in public. For the most part, I've noticed that they don't get mobbed by people trying to take selfies with them or get autographs. They kind of just let them be. I've seen Golden Knights players out at restaurants, and people pretty much leave them be up until they're done with their dinner. I think it's a pretty good thing if you're a sports fan or if you're a sports personality. That's kind of something a lot of other cities don't have. I've heard stories of Patrick Lane can't leave his house because every time he leaves his house he gets locked. So he's just stuck in his condo in Winnipeg, which probably isn't the greatest thing to be stuck in, especially right now. Hi, Ash. But I've seen Jay-Z at the Hard Rock, and at least one thing for me, like I don't like fan out, but I don't know, maybe like I have a hall pass. There's all people, Chris Birdman Anderson, uh, at the time, the Denver Nuggets, then the Miami Heat, and then back to Cleveland Cavaliers. But for whatever reason at the time, I really just liked it. Like he's a loud character, tattooed, tall basketball, white guy, similar to myself in some range. And I had his jerseys. And one day at Mandalay Bay Pool, kind of like their party pool, he happened to be there. Like during the NBA playoffs, since he was on the Nuggets, so he had all the free time in the world to be in Vegas. And I was telling myself and the person I was with, I was like, they're like, you should go talk to him. Like, you have his jerseys. Like, you're a fan. I was like, I don't want to do that. That's just not a thing that I want to get wrapped up into. A couple of drinks later, a couple of shots later, I'm like, all right, if he comes down out of his, VIP area, I'm going to talk to him. Or at least try to say something. And like moments later, he did. He was like talking to a security guard, just kind of hanging out. I went up and I stood next to him. And I think I'm tall, like 6 foot. He is tall. He is like 7'1" and it towers above me. So when I'm talking to him, I'm like talking to him like this. And I go up to him and I was like, hi, Mr. Anderson. Like, I'm a big fan of yours. Like, I have your jerseys. I just wanted to say hi. And I don't know if he didn't hear me or he has something else going on. But he was like, oh, hey, man, I was going to come talk to you about your tattoos. Like, where'd you get them? I'm like, oh, I'm from here. Oh, cool, you're from here. He's like, oh, what do you do for a living? And I didn't even really hear him. I was like fanning out like a fangirl. I was like, oh, I work on the strip for a nightclub, and if you want to go out later tonight, like, or if you need a table or something, I can make a phone call for you. And he was like, no, man, Chris has got this. I wanted to say that he talked in third person, which I didn't mind, but I guess he's right because Chris had it. He had his own thing, and he was like, yeah, man, he's like, come meet us at the Aria and tell them you're with me and come hang out. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And ended up just leaving with no intentions whatsoever to like take him up on his offer. Because, I mean, going to a Vegas nightclub and saying you're with Chris Andersen with like literally no credentials, I just did not see that going well. And I was semi-accurate. Like after telling some other people this story, like after leaving the pool, they're like, you should go. And I was like, nah, I shouldn't. And like, I should have just went with my gut instinct and just gone after so many other just random occurrences happened. Kept going. But just like I thought, we get to the club at Aria and it's packed. And I go up to the VIP line and I go, hey, I'm with Chris Andersen. And he was like, sure you are. And he just didn't even give me the time of day. But I knew people that worked. It was the nightclub happened to be a sister property of ours, so I just went over to like the employee entrance line. I was like, hey, I work for the company or whatever. Like, how's the night going? Look on it. Hey, do you know Chris Andersen's here? He's like, yeah, he's got a table like downstairs. He's like, I was like, oh, do you mind taking me to him? The security guard took me down to him, and I was like, I'll see if this works. And I don't even like kind of make eye contact with him, and he's just like, oh, just hands in the air, just like, come on up. And I'm like, this is actually happening. And he gives me like this giant hug, and he just gives me a full bottle of Jägermeister. He's like, this is yours. And I was like, I'm not really a Jäger drinker, which is probably a dumb thing to say at the time, even though I wasn't. He's like, what do you want? I was like, well, I don't want to like impose. I'm just gonna go to the bar and get like a Jack or something. He's like, oh, hold on. And he reaches under the table, pulls out a bottle of Jack. He's like, this is yours now. I was like, and he just starts slamming the Jaeger, and I'm just like, all right. Here we ended up hanging out with him and his girlfriend and one of the guards for like the rest of the night. And he was like, yeah, man, we got to hang out again. And I was like, yeah, we do. And then I never got back, and not even like an informal email like or anything like that. So never saw him again. They say you let a bird go when it comes back, I guess. But this time it happened to be a bird.
Yeah, and I guess there's probably it's probably good in the Twitterverse that Birdman doesn't have a handle, because I mean I'm sure some of his past, which he's been cleared for, by the way.
Yeah.
People would probably still give him shit about some of that stuff, but it's in general it's kind of like the conqueror will never tweet. It's usually not a bad way to live anyway, so he's probably better off.
But he was the nicest guy. Like, even at the pool, he asked me if he was like, you want to get a picture? Let's get a picture together. And I was like kind of thrown off by it. So I did like the Talladega Nights like thing with my hands, like not know what to do with them. So he's doing like a cool like Instagram like pose, and I'm just like this. So I'll have to find that and send that out to you. And
Yeah, I need to see that.
I come up to like mid-chest on him, and I thought I was a tall person. And the person I was with at the time was like 5'5", and it's just like dick height. It's just awkward. It's just awkward to be around a person of that height. But he couldn't have been a nicer dude.
No, I was caught off guard by that story when you first mentioned it to me. I was not to say I expected him to be an asshole, but whenever you see somebody like that famous, or he might not be that famous to some people, but to you he was like kind of like an idol of sorts. Not maybe that's not the right word, but
I just liked him for some reason. He was on the Nuggets, and he was like an 11-point player. Like, he wasn't. I don't know why. Like, I just liked him, but I have his Nuggets jerseys and home and away. Like, I don't know. I may be the only person with an away Chris Andersen Nuggets jersey.
Nothing.
But I mean, if anybody knows him out there, tell him. Yeah, if anyone knows him out there, tell him I say hello. Appreciate the Jack Daniels bottle.
Let's get you guys reunited.
I think he's got some free time.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay, so the last part here before we get to one of the listener questions is a little more of a personal story, a little more off the Vegas grid here, and it has to do with about 3 years ago you had a cancer diagnosis, and obviously a scary time for anybody, but you feel free to share like that whole experience in terms of like like what you had and like how you went through it mentally and physically, and like just the story from beginning to end, or whatever you feel like sharing.
Yeah, I'll just openly say, like, I know some people don't like to tell their old stories, or it draws up too many bad memories or whatnot, but if anybody out there is dealing with any form of cancer or any sort of health issue, and they want to ask me what I did or what I've researched, or just anything, any day-to-day like dealing with it, message me. I'm always open to talk about it. I don't shy away from it. I think what helped me get through it the most was talking about it, and for someone that's just rambling to whoever would listen at the time. You yourself happen to be one of those people that reached out, and we would just talk, just randomly. It could just be like, how was your day? Like, well, what'd they say? Or just not even, what bets are you on that day? And it kind of just helped me through it. So I'm always open to talking about it, and any advice that I can share to help or go on for it. But how it originally started is I had a discoloration in my left thumb, like in the bed nail, that looked kind of like a racing stripe. And it's been there. It was there for a while. It was like a off brown sort of color. And I was in a car wreck like years past. And I'd gone to a doctor before about it. Initially, they said it's probably just nerve damage, and it's just probably like your nail bed is probably just F, and it's just a discoloration and nothing to worry about. And that probably went on for years and years and years. It never changed. It just stayed the same. But one day I was at work, and of all things, I remember it clearly. I was picking up like a plate of wings, like with my right hand, like over across the table, like too far, and my hand just like popped. Like I pulled like a muscle in my right hand. And I ended up going to the doctor at that point to get my hand checked out. And he was like, oh, this looks fine. But he's like, I am concerned about your left hand. He's like, what's going on here? He's like, do you mind if I take some pictures of it? I want to send this to some people. And he took pictures of my hand. And within 5 minutes, whoever he sent them to was on the phone with him. And he was like, we need to get this checked out. And I was like, yeah. I was like, sure, whatever. Like in my head, I thought it was just nerve damage. I didn't think it was, anything major. I'm like, I had it it felt like my entire life, but it obviously wasn't. And at that time, the place I was working at on the Strip went under a remodel, so I ended up losing my insurance for a while. So I ended up putting it off until I got Obamacare state insurance and had to start this whole process again. So from the day that he said there's something wrong to I should get it looked at was probably a 6-month period. And I put it off and I put it off. But eventually I ended up seeing a doctor, and they're like, this could just be a fungus. Like, it doesn't seem, it could be nerve damage, it could be whatever, but they're like, we definitely want to do a biopsy on it. So what they ended up doing is taking something about the size of an eraser head, and they just jam it into the top of your nail, twist, and just pull it out like a cork. And that wasn't the greatest day, but it was pretty painful. That was, I want to say, at the beginning of January 2018. And somewhere in the middle of January, I get a phone call, like 8 in the morning, like probably as soon as they opened up, they call me like, hey, we have your results. It's not good. It's cancer, and it's melanoma. I didn't know anything about it. I only knew about like basal cell, which is my dad dealt for many, many years. But basal cell is basically they can cut it out, they could burn it off, they can freeze it off. Like, it's not something major to think about. I was kind of thinking it's probably the same thing. I was like, oh, they're probably just going to go in there and scrape it out. But they're like, no, no, no. Melanoma is a rare form of skin cancer, an aggressive form of skin cancer, and depending how bad it is, it could be an unstoppable virus that's in you. And after the biopsy, they said it was, they have different levels for it, like they do bone and skin cancer, like level 1 through 4, and they call it a cleric level. And mine was cleric level 4. So now I'm dealing with a rare form of cancer, an aggressive form of cancer, and the most aggressive form of this cancer. It's actually the same exact cancer that Bob Marley had in his foot, in his big toe, and he ended up dying from it. So when researching what melanoma was, the first thing that comes up is Bob Marley died of melanoma. Not exactly the first thing you want to see. And another, it was just, even then, I don't know if it was shock or whatnot, but I was like, all right, whatever. They're just going to go in there kind of like, scrape it off, Yeah, I'll lose my thumbnail, not a big deal. So from there, they ran more tests, and I went to another doctor here in town, and he got my paperwork back, and he was like, I have some bad news. He's like, this is very aggressive, and there's a chance that this could have traveled from your hand into your lymph nodes, which are like in your armpits, which is basically, the freeway for your body to operate. It connects your lungs, your liver, kidneys, and everything. They're like, if this is spread, there's nothing we can do at this point. Chemo has no effect on melanoma whatsoever. So that wasn't a great day once again. And they're like, so you have a couple of options. Option one is we're going to cut your thumb off, and hopefully that's enough of an area that it hasn't spread, so we'll stop it there. And he's like, there's a good chance that if it went to your lymph nodes in your armpit, we're going to have to cut from your shoulder blade off. And that was probably the time where I was like, this is serious. Like, that was the oh shit moment of where I was like, oh, like, this is real. Like, that's when that was a changing point in like the process where I was like, kind of like, I'll just get through this. I'm young, I'm healthy, like, this isn't going to be a big deal. But that moment right there panicked me more than else. And so from there, I talked to a couple of friends, and I talked to my primary care doctor, and they're like, hey, you should probably get a second opinion of it. And he's like, I know a guy out at USC that specializes in this. You should get a second opinion. So as soon as I could get an appointment to go out there, I went to USC and talked to him. And he's like, no, amputation's where it's at. He's like, it's too much of a risk just to take off part of the thumb, or just like the tip, or kind of like just kind of ice cream scoop it out of there, or melon ball it out of there per se. And so from there, we had to set up but he didn't. He said at that point, he's like, we don't have to take the arm off as far as we know. And I thought that was kind of relief. So now I am under the impression that they're going to amputate at least some or part of my thumb off, and even right before the surgery, even up, like through the surgery, I didn't know how much of the thumb they were going to remove. Luckily, it's ended up to where it's just the knuckle. So I still have motion this way. I mean, after some like therapy and some other, just time, I'm able to kind of grip it. Not so much on video games or texting anymore, but it's still pretty normal after the fact. But even I went through a checkup after the amputation, and they did a lymph node biopsy to see if it had spread. And weeks went on where they actually like pushed back my checkup date, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a good sign. Like if there's anything serious, they'd be like, you need to get back here. And 3 or 4 weeks went by, and I went back to LA. I was waiting for the doctor. The doctor comes in the room, and I just remember this. All he said, he's like, "It's not good. It's metastatic. It's in your lymph nodes. We're gonna have to do something else." He's like, "This is not good," and then just walked out. He's like, "Oh, so and so will be in here in a minute." Like that's all. Like so, I think the reaction was just like hands over my head. I just threw my hat on the ground, just like this. I'm like, I don't even know what that means at this point. Like, I don't know. I didn't at the time didn't know what metastatic mean. I didn't know what my lymph nodes did, like, at the time. But
Yeah.
the worst case scenario, I guess, had happened. But after doing some research, it was just metastatic, meaning it was just cellular. Like, there was no other masses in my body. But if we don't do something, it's going to, like, just take over your body, and it's just game over at that point. So on that drive back from LA, I left there at about 3:30. And anyone who knows in LA, it's not probably the best time to leave LA. It's probably not the best time to be alone with your thoughts for 3.5 hours in downtown LA traffic coming back. I thought I just went down there. I thought everything was going to be fine. Friends of mine wanted to come with me. I was like, I'll be fine. And I just spent 3.5 hours in LA traffic just contemplating life, trying to hey Google, what's metastatic melanoma? Like just like talking to my phone, like trying to figure out what to do and what's going on. But from there, he recommended immunotherapy, which isn't chemo. It's basically an injection you get like through an IV for about an hour, and it supercharges your immune system to fight off any virus that's in your body with your own immune system. The guy who created it just got like the Nobel Prize in Science like 2 years ago. It's only been around for about 10 years, but it's constantly getting better. It's constantly getting better. It's known to fight off other diseases as well. Jimmy Carter had it to fight off his brain cancer, and it worked. Okay. But then I started researching it more, and the cost of it was the next hurdle. And I saw it can cost anywhere from a year's worth of treatment is what they were recommending, $800,000 to $1.2 million for all 12 injections.
My God.
And I had insurance, but even for like the surgery on my hand, they're like, we're only going to cover part of it. So now it's a whole, how much are they going to cover? What are they going to, like, they're not just going to let me die, right? I'm like, that's not a thing that happens. Are they going to be like, that's too expensive? Like, these are the thoughts, like, you have. And, like, and now looking back, I was like, those aren't logical thoughts, but, I mean, irrational or whatever, but it's what you do. I'm like, I can't afford, a Porsche every month. Like, how is this a thing? But luckily, through insurance and financial assistance, it ended up getting pretty much just, I had to pay my my cap, which is about $55, and everything after that was taken care of through the hospital.
Wow.
So if that's one thing of advice I can give is reach whatever hospital you're at, they have a financial institution in there. And for people who have cancer, they have grants set up. They have big galas happen, these phone and things. There's banks of money set up for you, so if you survive, you're not crippled financially, and they're out there. And I don't remember who told me, but somebody was like, hey, you should talk to their financial advisor. I didn't know that even existed. And I ended up talking to her. Yeah. She's like, well, not only are we going to do this, we're going to get you copay assistance for next year. So when you lapse, we'll take care of it again. All of that. And it was of all the things, it was the most painless thing possible.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
that's
ended
not
up
what you
doing that for about 14 months. Yeah.
yeah, and that's not what you expect too. Like the horror stories that you hear of people dealing with the healthcare system. Like to a lesser degree, my wife having all of her insulin that she needs to get, and I just recently changed jobs, so I changed insurances, and the price for insulin is just ridiculous. And thankfully we were able to pay for her recent medications, but we have insurance, and out of the insurance policies at my work, it's considered one of the better ones. So it's like even when you have insurance, it's very hard to cover some of these medical costs that you have. So it's
Mm-hmm.
you got. I'm just. It's really gratifying to hear that you didn't. That was like the least of your worries, when it's usually like one of the bigger worries when people are doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of money on my credit card for like co-pays, and luckily, I have a great support within my family that helped out during these times. My sister went with me to LA one time. My friend went with me. I put things on my credit card. But like you said, the horror stories that you hear, I mean, for all that happened, like I'm not crippled from it. It's not the greatest thing, but I'll be able to pay it off in some years or whatnot, like cap payments and whatnot. But even like when I was getting my CT scans, those are like $2,000, and insurance covered part of it, and even the rest was like $1,200 left over. And at the time, like I was unemployed, I was in between jobs. But even them, I was like, hey, is there a way we can make payments? And they was like, oh, yeah, all you got to do is ask. And they never tell you that you can make payments. But if you ask, they're just like, oh, yeah, can you give us $100 a month? I was like, oh, yeah, that changes, like, I'm not eating for the next week to, like, a manageable existence. And those things do exist out there. So just I'll ask, I guess, is my advice.
Yeah, because the worst thing they could hear is no, like, or sorry, that doesn't exist. Like, it never hurts to ask or look something up when it comes to that. Because yeah, I learned about a lot of different programs just based on our moms looking into things. Like that's what moms do. They're
Yeah.
gonna look out for you. So if you have a good support network too, like fortunately I do, and my wife does. They'll be able to help you out with that stuff. So if you do feel overwhelmed, you can kind of say, hey, do you mind looking this up for me? Because I've had a long day, because I know that there's been times where my wife's had her health issues, and it's like, you don't want to think about that. Let somebody
Yeah.
else try to help you out with that. So, it sounds like you had a good network of people that you could lean on too. So, that's something that's very important during
Yeah,
those times.
luckily because luckily I did because I'm a pretty emotional person, like hard on your sleeve type. So when I was getting these news, I was just train wreck of a mess. And then
Sure.
friends or my mom, because my dad had just gone through this with his cancer, so my mom kind of knew the steps of like who to talk to and what to ask for. She was basically his nurse at this point, his bookkeeper, and she kind of, if it wasn't for her, I probably would have fell apart. And also some close friends that helped me through it, and even kind of like during it, maybe this is my take on it, but there's like I got invited to a lot of night games like during this time. So I don't know if like people they just happen to have extra tickets at the time, but my friend Big Mike invited me out. He had season tickets, and actually Spoon on Twitter, like anytime he had an extra ticket, I don't know if it was because of this or not. I've never really asked him, but he's like, hey, I've got an extra ticket, or I've got four, or I've got tickets in the suite. Do you want sitting on the glass? Like, do you want to go? And like Spoon like reached out a lot, and like during those times where you're just kind of you get in your own head, and especially at the time, I was unemployed or just starting a new job. Like I had too much free time, and I was really getting in my head
Yeah.
about it. So if it wasn't for those people, and there's countless others, Jimmy was like, dude, come to my bar, I'll buy you drinks, like, or just whatever. I mean, those things help. So if you do know someone, and you think like, hey man, let's just go to a movie or whatever, and you don't think it's a lot compared to what they're going through, it's a massive help. If you can get someone's mind off like what you said, what they're going through for 5 minutes, buy them a beer, take them out to like a hockey game or whatever, and like I couldn't be more grateful for those types of people.
Yeah, and you know, you always hear the people like say like, "Let me know if you need anything." All right, well, here's something I need, and then that you know, yep, hold them up to that
Yeah,
offer. Like, even if it's a bluff, like call them out on it. Like, yeah, here's something that you can help me out with. So that's good though. I'm glad to hear that you have a good network there.
yeah.
Is there?
Most people would reach out. I kind of felt like I was like, oh, well, you know, in my head I was like, oh, maybe this is. I was dumb. I was like, maybe this is the world telling me like enjoy this now because this is going to go sideways real fast. But thankfully it didn't, and now I just have a lot of great memories of nights games and other wine walks and like other cool events I just uh, randomly got to go to. And I don't know if it was because of just people being nice or of my situation, but they're just awesome people for it.
Yeah. So give us an update to wrap up this story because it's
Yeah.
the ending the at least the ending for now because I mean you know
Yeah.
there could be more but as of right now you went to the doctor about like 3 or 4 weeks ago I think and you got
Yes.
news.
Yeah. So I stopped the treatment, and then I thought I was out of the woods, and he was like, no, the next 2 years, like, we're going to keep track on this every 3 months, PET scans, CT scans, MRI, blood work every month, because there's a chance of it coming back in the next 2 years. It'll be 2 years, the end of this month, that if everything, I think they call it like disease not recognized, or you can basically say remission. If everything comes back clear at the end of this month, chances are less than 10% that probably it will ever come back. So that's kind of the final step right now is I'm waiting to hear that. But I'm pretty confident. I haven't had any hiccups on the way. Blood work's been fine. I'm pretty much, I would say, out of the woods at this point, or at least the last tree.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, but to end on a lighter note, it was a great story, but we got to end with a Kunk question.
Yeah.
We didn't get a lot of questions, but we did get one from our buddy Kunk here. And one of your favorite threads that you got going on, it's been going on for about a year, I feel like, at least.
Yeah, I think so, about a year.
Is Darren Ravel, a.k.a. Daryl.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that don't really know Darren Ravel that well, in short, he's kind of a laughing stock of gambling Twitter, even though he claims to be some kind of expert.
Yeah, I think he started at SI reviewing ballpark food. I really think that's all his claim to fame was at the time.
So, Kung's question was your favorite tweet amongst that thread. I'm sure it's kind of hard to figure out maybe a specific one. So maybe if you have a couple that like kind of stand out.
I think probably my favorite one is the fact that he's calling himself a sports business like insider or reporter. And, as the landscape gets bigger for sports gambling and more states get legal, I wouldn't expect everyone to understand all the nuances of it. But I would hope that people after a year maybe in their own town understand what the difference is, of like a 3-point dog or like a favorite. And I feel we're like a year and a half or maybe longer into Ravel being at Action Network and still doesn't understand the simple basics of it. And when people try to talk to him about it, he calls them trolls or blocks them. And I think some people in like the gambling community have actually tried to like help him see the light. And he's blocked people like Rufus, who is kind of well known within the gambling community, and he labels him as a troll. So I think one of my favorite tweets was when he started this whole parlay Pats thing. He started following this character around who's doing like these big like 8-team massive money line parlays, and the intrigue of it, I guess, from Ravel's standpoint, is this dude's betting like 100,000 to win 70 on these massive parlays, and the kid, for I guess for whatever reason, maybe hit like 3 of them in a row, or however the story goes, and like Ravel attached himself to this like this was the next messiah of sports gambling. And when someone called him out on it, he was like, "Well, if it's that easy, why don't you do it?" Which is kind of how, like, you should be in like the know that these giant money line parlays just aren't going to happen all the time. And I think from that moment on, not only did that parlay patch like not win another one, he went on getting, I think he was arrested for harassing players, sending direct messages to college basketball players, like costing him money. And even to that point where, like, he's now arrested by the police, Ravel was still backing him, like saying, "We did our due diligence." Like, and everyone's like, "Really? Like, what did you do?" And his response was, another tweet was like, "We checked with William Hill to see if the bets were real." Like, that was some kind of due diligence on his part, where everybody was telling him, like, this isn't something you need to be following. And it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed much. He just gives a gym probably every couple of days. And I mean, this is the guy who thought it was a good idea to tweet the live video of JFK getting assassinated at 8:30 in the morning, and then followed it up a couple of days ago by talking about COVID and quarantine. And he posted a tweet. He's like, "If you think you have it bad, imagine how Anne Frank had it." And that was like that thought went through his head, and thought it was good enough to put on Twitter. And I don't really understand it. He's a sports business reporter, and it was just, I don't know, it's not something I would like to have, coming across my timeline, but that's what Daryl's for.
And I don't remember who tweeted it, but the whole point of Twitter is to make sure that you're not the lead character of the book that day.
Yeah.
He seems to be the antagonist quite a bit, and not in like the enjoyable "I'm going to buy this book" kind of way. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you talking about kind of way.
Yeah, I think there's some people out there that are playing a character per se for their clicks and retweets, and I think Daryl's just obtuse. I don't. Just the way I feel.
Yeah, it's hard to say sometimes, because some people, like, there's those theories that, like, Trump or somebody might misspell a word intentionally just to get more retweets, because people are gonna correct him on his misspelling. And it's like, there's probably some people that do that on purpose just to get more exposure. I can't say if he does that, because I think I might have followed him very briefly, but I've found him to be obnoxious and stopped following him shortly after.
I think he has to have me on mute. I am just absolutely shocked that I'm not blocked at this point. But I think I may have gotten muted, and kind of I'm able to still see what's going on while not really having to interact with him. So I've replied to some of his things. He's never replied to anything I said. But
yeah, and I think you've been kind to those who are blocked, because anyone who's on Twitter knows to take screenshots of tweets of the more obnoxious people, because those are the people who tend to block people the most. So,
well, that was another thing of his. Like, he got in trouble for stealing photos from, I think, the L.A. after Kobe died, and that was a big thing. He's like, "Well, I had to take a screenshot because I needed the photo to frame right on Twitter, so I couldn't give credit to the person who actually took the photo," which is another favorite of him to do. I take screenshots of his stuff because most people can't see him because they're blocked.
Yeah. It's a different story. He just wants the impressions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll end on that note, because what's better than ending on ranting on Daryl? Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up before we call it a night?
I don't know. That's it. I don't know if you got anything else.
No, I was just going to mention, a few days from now I got another podcast. It's with Ed Miller Poker. Then after that is going to be my first non-sports or non-betting podcast. I have a couple of people who live like actually within a mile from me who brew at Rabid Brewing, and I'm gonna talk to them about beer and
Awesome.
sumo wrestling because they're big sumo wrestler fans. They show sumo wrestling. So
Can you bet on that right now? That's something we can bet on.
I don't think so. I don't think I've seen sumo offered, but we're gonna talk about that. So I'm looking for.
There's probably some sharps out there. If there's a hot dog syndicate, there's definitely a sumo syndicate out there.
I wouldn't put anything past anybody at this point. So, all right. Well, Johnny, thanks for joining. I appreciate it.
No problem. And, thank you.
I think this time it recorded, so this should be going up shortly. But again, everyone, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all.